You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned. You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned. You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned. You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned. You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned. You're watching the People's Television, ABC.
Muy buenas tardes.
A very fine afternoon to one and all. We will now begin our meeting 2171. I am very pleased again to receive the delegation of Cameroon, led by Ambassador Salomon Ehith. We can thus continue to consider the sixth periodic report from Cameroon in this 2161st meeting. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will continue in French, with your leave. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to the honorable members of the committee and to all of those who are here in this room. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, in this important session of the CAT, again, this is more or less the concluding session in considering the sixth periodic report of our country. So some introductory remarks here. Cameroon, as everyone knows, Cameroon is a state with rule of law. It is and I see that in all senses of the word, it is a democratic state. The head of state, Mr. Biya, since ascending through the supreme magister of the country, has made human dignity and human rights a central pillar of his leadership. The law on liberty and freedom, voted in 1990, clearly set forth his vision for his field of action, setting his firm commitment to the development of human rights in Cameroon. There is no torture at the hands of the state in Cameroon. The state of Cameroon does not practice torture. There can be cases of torture that are not committed at the hands of the state. The pause, the moratorium on the death penalty, is an eloquent statement reflecting the efforts of the Cameroon state to fight violence in all of its forms. When there are violations of the law, the jurisdictions are there to prosecute. Mr. Chairman, the case of torture that will be addressed here are not acts committed by the state. These are isolated acts of people not authorized by the state. And as I had indicated, inquiries were launched immediately to ensure accountability. The state of Cameroon has never ordered anyone at all to practice torture. The President of the Republic has enshrined fundamental liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of circulation of individuals, etc. These are realities in Cameroon. For those who travel or look at social media, they bear witness to this. The chairman, Cameroon today has more than 350 political parties. There are more than 300 different media outlets, television, newspaper, written press. No one has to hide to speak in Cameroon. The President of the Republic has indicated on repeated occasions that no one should be investigated as a result of their opinions, and that is important. Now, the person who has been most criticized in Cameroon is the president. When we look at at social media, one would ask if he was sensitive to this. I'm going to stop there. I don't want to make comparisons. One has only to visit the internet to see what is written about Cameroon and the President of the Republic every single day. That to reaffirm that there is no state-sponsored or ordered torture in Cameroon. People are free to express themselves, and when these freedoms are abused, then the jurisdictions are in place to address it. Cameroon works with international instruments, including instruments working in the realm of torture, to fight torture, that is. Someone, I've already said this, and I'll say it again. This ratification came in 2010 with the protocol. And I don't want to go back to that sad event, but the documents were lost their way, but they will be completed and submitted. So we are in phase. Our domestic legislation is in step with international law, and the same for our institutions in all areas of law enforcement. The second observation that I wish to make, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of this committee, has to do with the crisis that is coming to an end, thank the Lord, as a result of the resolve from the head of state and international partners and the administration, including the and for this, the High Commissioner and for Human Rights and the United Nations have commended us. Perhaps I misunderstood. Someone said that this is a crisis between Anglophones and Francophones, and that's just false. That doesn't exist. Cameroon is one nation, and I say this stricto sensu. There are some citizens that have said, driven by whatever they're driven by. We don't need to open a debate about this, but they have said that they would like to succeed. However, but this political succession, we don't seek through killing, kidnapping, the burning down of facilities, schools, hospitals. it is the state role to deploy law enforcement to keep the peace and to protect the population. There's no war in Cameroon. There is no army fighting against our citizens. So I think that this is information that's worth noting. There are law enforcement efforts. They are responding to acts of terrorism. Those who have launched this movement are using means akin to those of terrorism. It's important to note this. Cameroon is a united country. It's important to note this, Mr. Chairman. We have more than 250 ethnic groups, and we live in peace and harmony. We are not divided by our cultures, by the English language, by the French language. We all speak English. We all speak French. To the contrary, this is a source of wealth for us, Mr. Chairman. So I think that these are very important items to note when we look at the case of Cameroon. I know that we're broadcasting live, and I know that the international community is listening to us. We must make it known that we are a democratic country with rule of law. Yes, people say all manner of things, and that's why people can put forth people can commit acts that are not sanctioned by the state, and then they will be punished for that. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, I could circle back to other items, but I think it's important to note that what I have just said and to do so with strength and clarity. Madam Director, many questions were asked of us yesterday. Perhaps you could circle back to some of those. I also will take the floor again now and then. Thank you very much, Madam Director. The floor is yours.
Good evening, fellow Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this very important exclusive, Undaunted exclusive. I believe you would have been watching the video. I did that strategically. I've watched it a couple of times, at least 5 different times. And that extract of the human rights session there in Geneva was quite troubling. Troubling is most especially for people like myself who have not just witnessed and who continue to experience every day as we get the realities of the reports on the ground. Before I left the Cameroon 6 years ago, I had an opportunity to witness it. So this is Cameroon government and their representatives are outrightly denying that there's no war in Cameroon. And so what did President Biya declare in 2017? That was on the 30th of November. What is the military doing with donated weapons in hinterlands to destroy people? So there's a lot. And we would have discussed this issue on ABC last week a couple of times, Barrister Mbeseha with Undaunted. The Horizon, we have been streaming it all through the week. The Horizon with Dr. Fred Lobati had some level of this discussion, but because of its importance, its critical importance, we're streaming this program globally so that the world can get our own perspective. I wouldn't even say our own perspective, but to get a clarity of the realities on the ground. We want to explain. This is not propaganda. We simply would like to explain simply what is happening on the ground. And there's just a lot for us to do. When they say Cameroon forces are actually acting based on law and that their government is not responsible for what the army does to citizens they claim to be theirs. It's not only a paradox with what some of their ministers would have said. It is an unfortunate, dangerous lie in today's world. If you're looking very closely, what I'm going to be showing you on the screens right now, if you're looking at this very image you're watching, this is the Biya of Cameroon. Some of you would know that. That's Cameroon Biya. These are persons tortured with impunity by forces loyal to Biya. So we want to look at the human rights report. Our intention is to first of all debunk, but explain to the international community straightforwardly the claims of the Cameroon government at the UN Committee Against Torture. We want to explain. You're watching, I want you to see, we have a couple of such of these images that I like you to see them. Some of you is going to refresh your mind. So our objective would be to shed light on the troubling human rights situations in the Cameroons, particularly regarding the treatment of Amazonian people. That's our interest. We want to look on it. So following discussions at the UN Committee Against Torture in Geneva, serious allegations of torture, arbitrary detentions, and other abuses by La République du Cameroun state forces were brought to the forefront. Despite the assurances from the colonial government of Cameroon about their commitment to human rights, a significant gap exists between these claims and the harsh realities many citizens face. Now, government versus reality. During the recent session, the Cameroonian delegation made several assertions. I'll simplify them. Number one, they said police custody is capped at 48 hours. Lies. Number two, they said detainees receive 3 meals a day, including fruits. Lies. Families' visits are encouraged. Lies. There are many who was his family before he disappeared, never saw him. Legal counsel is present during interrogation. Lies. Torture is not practiced. Lies. You're watching the screen. Is that true? Falsehood. However, these statements, like I'm saying, starkly contrast with the experience of many who have come forward with harrowing accounts of mistreatments within the dungeons of the penal institutions operated by elements of the colonial forces. A memo from Galax Edoga, La République du Cameroun Secretary of State for the Gendarmerie, aimed at addressing arbitrary decisions, but notably failed to confront the widespread allegations of torture, particularly in the notorious facilities like the Secretariat of Defense, that's set, where many detainees, especially British Southern Cameroonians, have reportedly faced extreme violence. Documented cases of torture and human rights treatment that you would like to know. Several specific cases illustrate the extreme human rights violation occurring in Cameroon. Like what I say in the Cameroon. So we're going to see what's happening in French Cameroon and in British Southern Cameroon. You have Joseph Tachim, a telecommunications engineer who was coerced into signing documents against his rights without understanding their content and subsequently tortured by police in 2020. You have Adrian Popoviciu, the Danish consular attaché, who endured 2 weeks of torture during a police investigation in 2022, highlighting the vulnerability of even foreign diplomats. Now you have Olivier Ndongo Bilogo. Arrested in June 2023, Bilogo suffered several physical abuse that led to a brain hematoma, ultimately causing his death in July 2023. You have Edmond David Ngumpongon, that's in Ninche, tortured in 2019 after reporting his missing vehicle. Ngumpongon was left with critical injuries and his complaints have not been addressed until today. You have Sebastian Ebala. After organizing a protest against Biya, Ebala was arrested, beaten, and held in inhumane conditions for 41 days for a peaceful protest. You don't want us to talk about what happened in 2016. You have Doris Eloni Joa, a food trader who experienced violence treatment by police after an attempted robbery, illustrating the vulnerability of women in these circumstances. You have Paul Chata, a journalist kidnapped and brutally beaten, representing the risks faced. That's the risks faced by those reporting on human rights abuses. You have Martinez Zogo. It was widespread. A journalist whose mutilated body was found in January 2023, showing clear signs of torture, underscoring the lethal risk for those in the press. We have Wazizi, nowhere to be found. And then Longe, an artist who suffered severe abuse at a semi in Douala, with footage of his torture recently made public. These cases, among many others, reveal a deeply entrenched culture of violence and impunity within the Biya regime's law enforcement. But today they stand in front of the international community to deny it. Let's look at conditions of detention centers. Despite the government claims of improved conditions, detainees continue to face overcrowding, inadequate medical care, and the threat of violence. The lack of independent oversight allows these abuses to flourish unchecked, further eroding public trust in the justice system. Attacks on journalists and human rights defenders. We have seen a couple of them. The human rights organizations have said they are not even allowed to. Now, the colonial delegation's narrative dismisses the intimidation faced by journalists and activists. How true? However, numerous reports indicate a systemic effort to silence dissenting voices. The brutal treatment of those who dare to speak out against abuses not only undermines freedom of expression, but also contributes to a pervasive climate of fear. This is worse in the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Now, in conclusion, and probable recommendations to actors of human rights. The stark contrast between La République du Cameroon's claims and the documented experiences of abuse faced by the Ambazonian people highlights a pressing need for action. The world should act. And if that action should take place, if there's any time when there's that urgency, that action is now. So what are some of the government of Ambazonia's recommendation? An open investigation. Establish independent bodies to thoroughly investigate allegations of torture and ill treatment, ensuring accountability for those responsible. Cameroon should be pressured to reform their detention practices and facilities. And this should be supervised internationally. Align detention practices with international human rights standards, explicitly prohibiting torture and inhumane treatment. Number 3 recommendation, safeguard journalists and activists. Implement protection for some journalists and human rights defenders to ensure their safety and freedom to report the accuracy of what is happening on the ground. Increase oversight. Allow independent human rights organizations. Do not limit Amnesty International. All these organizations access to detention facilities to monitor conditions and report abuses. We know of Médecins Sans Frontières that doesn't work anymore in Amazonia. Raise public awareness, launch campaigns to educate. Would that even be possible in such a chaotic atmosphere in a country that is under the siege of the French? For the sake of the Amazonian people, the international community must hold the colonial government accountable for this violence and support efforts to protect the rights and dignity of all the citizens of the two Cameroons put together. The people of the former British Southern Cameroons, today Amazonia, in particular, face significant challenges amid a climate of repression, and they deserve the protection of their fundamental human rights. It is shocking to see how Mimi Mefo and other reporters like For Hansen, who as journalists suffered these brutal treatments, intimidation, and by the help of the public they escape safely, why they are not interested in reporting with accuracy. They have suddenly become proxies of La République du Cameroun, which is indeed unfortunate. I have with me this evening Barrister Mbeseha, who has worked with the UN and has been filing in human rights reports since 2019. I am one of those who have benefited from some of our reports, from some of his reports. In 2019, when I was faced with the law, the courts, in pleading my case, I made use of some of the reports, verifiable reports that he has made. We have someone who is interested in the advocacy of people. That's Dr. Fred Lobati. He's a medical doctor, but very interested in history and the rights of people, the right to freedom, not just for the Amazonian community, but internationally. He's also here today. We want to examine these issues for at least an hour so that the international community and the world will have no excuse of the facts. And everything we're going to say here today can be verified. We begin right now. Good evening, Dr. Fred Lobati. Good evening, Barrister Mbeseha. Thank you for opting to join Undaunted exclusive this evening. We started a few minutes late. We had to go through all of those reports so that we can give a preamble of this evening's conversation. I want to say thank you for opting to be a part of this. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
straightforward.
your line is breaking.
Are you hear me now? Dr. Fred, is my line breaking or maybe his internet or
Yes,
something?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, perfect. So maybe you want to check your internet, Barrister Mbeseha. But let's just begin. You have been following the human rights report by Cameroon in Geneva, the lies. And the unfortunate part is nobody is there to debunk it. Nobody is given the platform to debunk it. Maybe you guys should just give an introduction of what you think so that we can process
Thank you for
the
having me.
issue that we said slowly. I'll begin with you, Dr. Fred, while I find out
It's
with
breaking.
while I find out from Barrister Mbeseha what is happening with this condition, with this
Getting
connection.
it.
Please talk to us, Dr. Fred.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be participating in this program to bring out the truth of what truly La République du Cameroun is. I've been able to read the 36-page document of their report to that United Nations committee meeting, and also read extracts of what the committee said and resolutions that were made and recommendations that were made. Basically, what you realize is that La République lives in abject falsehood. They can never ever speak the truth. They are describing a utopian nation that does not exist on planet Earth. In fact, they try to portray themselves as even performing much better than the Western democracies in upholding human rights and in the way they treat what they consider to be criminals. And it's all false. For those people who live on the ground, if you have an opportunity to read this document, it is in fact so self-incriminating and laughable. You will not believe what is coming out of the mouth of La République du Cameroon because of what you experience on the ground on a daily basis. People live in constant fear, especially in the former British Southern Cameroon, with the army going around both in uniform as well as camouflaged as so-called amber fighters and going around as civilians. Sometimes they may even camouflage to dress up even as women or other individuals that would not be suspected as being military officers, just to go around, harass people, pick them up, and kill them. So it is really unfortunate. This document is self-incriminating. La République du Cameroon lives literally on falsehood, and it is very interesting. If we had time, I can read some portions of some of the lies that they tell. People will not even believe that it came out of their mouth. For example, they claim that there is no torture in Cameroon. Is there anybody in Cameroon who believes that there is no torture in the land? You know, we don't even want to go into more details, but it is in principle really terrible what that country is doing to the inhabitants of that land. And what they do to the French speaking is not as bad as what they do to the English speaking, that means those from the former British Southern Cameroon. And all of this is only about the resources of the land. La République du Cameroon, in collaborating with the French who want the resources, are doing everything to oppress the people, keep them under abject control in order to continue extracting resources. And it's really very unfortunate what they're doing to us. That is the first.
That's quite amazing. We're gonna go through that document systematically. If we do not finish it today, we'll probably continue on Saturday. But before we do that, I'd like to hear from Barrister Mbeseha. Barrister Mbeseha, please talk to us.
Well, I think we must understand where we're coming from. You see, what you see in Geneva is a hearing, and the hearing is based on the fact that Cameroon signed up to the agreements, to the treaties. And so, as part of the enforcement of what they signed up to, they hold those hearings. But you must understand also that international treaties and agreements are based essentially on good faith and international trust. And so when they go to Canada, when they go to Switzerland, holding those conferences, who represents the state party is the government. And the government will tell you the story they want you to hear. And so that's the background to which all these things are coming out. And in terms of human rights, for example, you probably will remember that human rights there in Switzerland, who are those people who were sitting there who were trying to prosecute Cameroon? They're just essentially human rights groups, international human rights groups. The human rights international groups are complemented by the local human rights groups, Agbombala and his people, and so on and so forth. But let us take the international human rights groups first. They may visit a country member signatory to the agreement. But when they visit those countries, like they visit Cameroon, you have to remember that they are coming on a visa given to them by the country. They will go to where they want to go on condition that the country party to the agreement has allowed them to go there because they will escort them there. They would show them the road to that place. And so they see what they want them to see and listen to whom they want them to listen. As an example, if they come to Yaoundé, they go to Kodingi. But you know that Kononge is so large, a prison. Suppose they take them to where Amugu is lodged, because they have a VIP prison there. Suppose they take them to where, for example, the Sisiku's are lodged. They are different from the other prisoners. So they're going to get the information they want the people to get. And for example, the last group that came to Cameroon, they decided to visit prisons. They took them to Yaoundé Kondengi. I don't know what section they went to. They took them to New Bell prison and they stopped. They knew and still know that there's war going on in the so-called Northwest and Southwest. They never went to Bamenda prison. They never went to Boya prison. So they go to where they want you to go. And then the local human rights groups like Agwambalas, they are not free to report what they want to report. Now, because Agwambala cannot just walk up to the central prison in Boya or Bamenda and say, oh, my group is called like this. And they will let you in. They will not let you go in. All of us remember, I think Paul Aya's group had a human rights group. When they were investigating them, they banned the nonsense. Say, Aya, your thing is banned. So they have a lot of control over what they want people to know. But above all, you have to, whatever thing we're going to discuss, have in mind that Cameroon is a fraudulent state. If you listen to what happened in Geneva, Cameroon has the best laws on the land. These are some of their laws. In fact, if you see their criminal procedure code, which I have a copy here, it's a cut and paste code, for example, from the United States, from France, from all those civilized countries. But I can tell you, 99% of the time, they don't respect any of those things there.
It's not implemented.
Yeah, they don't just even respect their own code. They have all the laws on the land. And if you try to follow what was going on in Canada and Switzerland, the Cameroon government will quote the text. When they say you have violated, they say, no, this is a text here. What this law prevents us from doing that. And the people will note it down. Well, they have a good law. That's why at the end of the day, you find them thanking them for the progress made so far. I was trying to show you that, for example, this is the criminal procedure code. We're dealing with criminal law. We're dealing with torture. Let us go to a simple thing as arrests and detention. In their Article 30, of their code, this is a procedure code, Article 30 talks about arrest, how to arrest a person. Simple thing like that. The police officer, gendarme, or whoever, must show a warrant of arrest signed by the state council or the court. He must identify himself. I mean, that's that basic. Who is the police officer, a gendarme officer, whoever identifies himself for arresting you? He doesn't even arrest you anyway. He sits in his office, he invites you to come with your two legs, and then they lock you up. In this very code, they provide in Article, I think, 25, that detention is an exception. Anybody who shows up there has a place of residence is released on bail. But they don't respect that. But at the Switzerland, they will show this code and say, this is our code. And so they are capable, and they do, in fact, manufacture evidence to defend themselves. If you read the reports, I've had the opportunity to read some of them. They say, Garbu will try to here. If you go to Bamenda, are you going to see any trial of those people in the Bamenda criminal, what they call Bamenda military tribunal? No. They write in that their statement that they have tried that they have 89 cases in the Boya military tribunal prosecuting those who have violated the law. But if you go to Boya physically or to Bamenda, are you going to find any trial in Bamenda or in Boya? You're not going to find it. So that is who they are. They are criminals of the worst grade. And the only thing that we can do, in summary, before we go to the details, is there should be some verification, follow up, which you and me cannot do. Some people should be able to go to Boya, go to Bamenda, for example, and say, this in Garibu, people who said they were tried. Where are they tried? They were sentenced to 9 months. Where were they sentenced? Because if there was a trial in Garibu, for example, They didn't try the people in Bamenda, even in the military tribunal in Bamenda. Why? By their law, these people have to be tried where the crime was offended. This is their own law here. How did they, if at all, find the Ngarabo offenders in Yaoundé or in Douala or in Bafoussam? That violates the law itself. And so, again, even this is procedure code, this is a criminal procedure code, which implies that the law is this. If you violate any of these procedures, it vitiates the whole trial. If, for example, you brought somebody before the court, you claim that you have arrested the guy, and they say, where is the arrest warrant? You don't produce one. Even if you produce one, where is your name that was indicated that this is me, principal, police officer, whatever, commissioner? It's not shown. It stops the trial there. That guy walks away. Because you caught him, you forced him illegally into your court. And so the case will never be heard. Again, I've had the opportunity to say here many times before, what they do in Cameroon, which is a routine, is manifestly illegal. For example, carry is not mentioned anywhere inside here. You are not allowed to go and amass people, take them to your place, take them to where
So
they don't live.
if I understand you very well, Barrister Mbeseha, the Cameroonian government is playing a fast one with the treaties they have signed, the conventions that they've gotten themselves subscribed with globally. They have their documents as window dressing of the actuality on the ground, what they will call it themselves actuality. And there's a lot you have said, and there are lots of questions which I'd like to ask you. But like you said, let's get into the details of it. So by the time we're concluding, I'll ask you some of those questions and we'll use it to conclude. There's no way a person, the B, for instance, Bataillon Intervention Rapide, which we would rather call Bulu Intervention Rapide, was created by Biya, and they directly report to him. And everything they do comes directly from his office. But he denies what he feels that has not been properly managed by the media, which is shocking. So I'm coming to you, Dr. Fred. I want us to get a little bit into this document. There's so much there. And I want to ask you even about some of the things Barrister Mbeseha has said there that is even included in this human rights report provided from, that's information provided by Cameroon Human Rights Commission. That is a C. I think that's Agbobala's organization. When I go through some of this, you may want to read some other aspects in this report. When I go through all of these, I feel like some of these organizations on the ground, either knowingly or unknowingly or under duress, like Barrister Mbeseha is claiming that they cannot control what they do, are just helping to legitimize the cruelty of this government to the international community, because their reports are actually not reports that are sufficient enough to paint an accurate picture of the crimes against humanity by this government. Dr. Fred, please talk to us.
Again, like I said, you wouldn't even know where to start or where to end. If you look into that report, they claim that all across the territory of what they consider to be the territory of La République du Cameroon or Cameroon, there is no mass grave. But we know that there are lots of mass graves around the governor's office in Biya. You know, when the governor called the English-speaking people, the people of British Cameroon, when they came out on September 22nd of 2017 and marched in their millions, he called them dogs, and that would treat them like dogs. And on October 1, they came out with helicopter gunships and were shooting them from the air. And since then, they have been arresting thousands of people who literally disappeared. And many of them were buried around Mount Fako or Mount Cameroon there in Biya. The mass graves, some say, are around his offices down there. And yet they claim that there are no mass graves. We saw how the University of Biya students came out, and when they were demonstrating on university issues, not very much this conflict between the English-speaking and the French-speaking in Southern Cameroon and La République du Cameroon, just among students, the army came They got some students, dug holes, made these students dig their own graves, put them in it and shot them and pour them and buried them in these shallow graves around the university campus. And yet they say that there are no mass graves all across the territory. There are just too many things that you can bring out. If you go into the Ngabo report, what they said is that in early February 2020, intelligence services were informed that the village of Ngabo in Tumba, located in Donga Mountain Division, Northwest Region, was being used as a rare base by the separatists that they call, who had set up a warehouse of arms, ammunition, explosives, and fuel of illicit origin there. And after a large-scale search operation was carried out in that division by the security forces, several secessionist rival factions, of which some members were dressed in army uniforms, converged on Ngabo to entrench themselves there in order to free the village from the control of these people. The military carried out an operation there on February 14, assisted by members of the vigilance committee. That means the Mborolos, the Muslims who keep cattle. During the confrontation, there was a crossfire, and the arms, ammunition, and explosives in the warehouses exploded. It was in this confusion that some civilians, including children, were caught in the crossfire and lost their lives. That is their report. And then they said, in order to shed light on the circumstances of this tragedy, to determine the perpetrators and to establish responsibility, the high authorities of the state set up a joint commission of inquiry. After investigation on the field, the commission found that 4 soldiers had not properly conducted the operation to free Ngabo from the grip of the separatists as far as supervision and execution mutatis mutandis are concerned. And they said the commission concluded that this shortcoming may have led to the collateral damage where those people were killed, especially those children, were registered. To face the consequences, disciplinary procedures were initiated against the senior officer. As for the 3 other soldiers, they were placed at the disposal of the state prosecutor at the Yaoundé military tribunal, who requested the opening of a preliminary inquiry against them for capital murder, arson and destruction, assault on women with child, and breach of orders. After charging them, the examining magistrate issued a remand warrant against them on April 24, 2020, and closed the preliminary inquiry on October 20th of 2020, and committing them for trial before the Yaoundé military tribunal in the criminal matters where the case was still pending. That means that is how they have dealt with it. They claim that it was separatists that gathered there, had warehouses of a lot of ammunition, explosive, gas, and they just went there with the vigilante, the Muslims in this case, and tried to help the locals. And in the process of this, the ammunition went on fire and killed. Now let's come back and think. Do those people, even the people that were resisting and fighting for self-defense, do they have that much money to buy a lot of ammunition, including explosives and all those things, and put them in a big warehouse in a small village area like Ngabo, not to mention big cities, big towns like Bamenda and others where the military is operating all the time? They go and hide it in a very small remote town like that. They have so much money to keep so much equipment there, and they claim that they just went there innocently to help relieve the people, and in the process, the explosives just suddenly went off and then killed those many children. And they were still examining this case, and the thing was still pending. Can you hear what they said? This is just falsehood. They try to cover up the lies. It's like somebody who has stooled on themselves. It stinks so bad, and they're pouring perfume to smell good to cover up what they have done. I don't want to go into more details. Just the fact that they claim that there are no mass graves and no people were killed, no secret prisons. Remember that in the airport in Bamenda, they have been carrying people constantly, every day, there, torturing them and killing them. People who live around there have heard people screaming and yelling for their lives. Nobody mentions that. They would not even mention that. They talk about the Bamenda prison and the Boya prison and those other ones. And that's where they may take some few people to show some of the better living quarters like Barrister was talking about. But the Bamenda prison is where they have been torturing and killing, extrajudicially executing people. We know many other areas where they have done this. And even Ray Buba, who is the assistant president of the Senate, had his own private prison in his chief place there in the north by Garwa there, where he was maltreating his locals who dared to utter a statement not only against him, but against the Republic of Cameroon. And the government knows about it and encourages it and promotes it. There are several private prisons all over the place where people are being killed, not just the ones that they have mentioned. I'll just leave it right there, but I just wanted to read Ngabo because every time they bring this up, hear how they presented that. And also that there are no mass graves in the country.
Yeah, by Mbeseha, I know you want to react to that, but maybe I should ask a question that will help you react and maybe add some flesh to what Dr. Lobati is saying there. You mentioned on issues of the difficulties faced by human rights organizations like the Bobala Human Rights. Do you think that activities of these individuals, because I've read some of his reports, where he is also accusing the people of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia the same way Biya is accusing it. There are some who feel that he is just a compromised fellow pretending to be a human rights activist or human rights advocate, probably to help legitimize Cameroon's barbarism in the international community, because he understands that he occupies a great portfolio when it comes to talking about human rights in Africa. Talk to us, Barrister Mbeseha.
Well, I think he ought to know that more than I do. Anybody, in terms of human rights in particular, who wants to operate within that geographical space called Cameroon, you have to operate on the lines of government, or you lose your, or you lose your life. You are very aware of the Mimi force, though her report is not the best. While she was in Cameroon, she could not even produce what she's doing now. The penalty for doing something the contrary is death. So we have to admit that those people who venture to remain in that geographical space and operate in any form or shape are very, very limited. They take a lot of risk. They can only do so much. But they could improve their job if they have alliances with foreign press, where they send those sensitive reports to them and they are reported from abroad. And that would take me to this mass grave thing. Yeah, when they say he has no mass grave, who believes them in that thing? You think the reporter, maybe it is a French reporter, an American reporter, does he think that he went to Vogada, he went to Bamenda to see mass grave? No, somebody sent the information to them. And they have details of it. I remember that report they gave there in Geneva. They guys say, okay, at the appropriate time, if you give us the permit, if you allow us, we'll unearth the mass graves. They have that evidence there. And just tarry it with what happened with those women in the north. Those reporters who reported from France and the UK and so on, that no, you actually killed this woman and her children. They were not Cameroonians. They had that evidence kept there, sent to them by some reliable people. So they are mass graves. When they make the allegation against you, know that they have evidence. The good thing about it is you cannot kill a mass grave. Sooner or later, when the President Biya's regime is no longer there, somebody will come there, they will unearth those mass graves. They are there. The second point is that we should all know that this, you don't expect them to come there and accept that they did something wrong. They will tell you a story. But sometimes in telling their story, they need to really incriminate themselves that they have no way to escape. Take the Ngaribu issue mentioned herein. They told the story of Ngaribu. They went there to unearth weapons, which they were reported there. International law and even local law prohibits the use of vigilante. If those stories were true, the people you would take to go and take the weapons are experts in weapons, not vigilante. The role of the vigilante is not to go and investigate things like that. It is even an illegal organization. And so they tell those lies, are in the process of lying, they incriminate themselves. Yes, they will not admit that there's torture. They will not admit. But before them, in their own very court, Martinez Gozo, what I call him, the charge is killers for complicity to in torture. They are
Martinez
being charged
Zogo.
for yeah, Martinez, they are charged for accomplices to torture in the detention center. So how can they say there's no torture, and then they have people being standing trial in their own courts for complicity in torture in their detention centers? And so,
Mhm,
again, they tell the stories and then they incriminate themselves. You just mentioned something which they use all the time. The B, by their own code
mhm,
here, the B are not judicial police. The judicial police people who are involved in investigations are, by Cameroon law, gendarmes and police officers who, in their normal training, are supposed to have been trained in investigations, in human rights, in civil rights. They are supposed to have followed it because they are going to deal with the civilian population. The B is a component of the military. The B, in particular, was trained essentially to defend the presidency. Brigade intervention rapid for rapid intervention to save the presidency. That's what they are trained for. That's why they are the greatest failure. You send them to Bamunda, you send them to Boya. That is not the environment for which they're trained to defend a treaty, which is put in a different context. They land them there by air, and they chase whoever is trying to drive away Paul Biya with the expertise that they've learned. But the B today has become part of their security forces. The B as a component of the army is like saying the Navy. The Navy is trained to fight in the sea. The Air Force is trained to fly planes. So you bring planes, you bring an Air Force guy to Batibo or a Navy guy to Lebielem, where there's no river even. How do you expect them to operate there? So they violate their own laws by themselves. And again, it's a question of time. As I was saying earlier, if Cameroon ever respected their own international obligations, signed treaties in good faith, they will not be where they are. The country will not be where it is right now. Let me just give the last example. You know what happened to the deal of Idabato? I had said here 2 days ago. That thing is as a result of Cameroon refusal to implement the 2006 Green Tree Agreement. Under the Green Tree Agreement, Cameroon was supposed to go to Bakassi as a block, develop the place, if they're using flying boats there, they have the flying boats there to secure the people who are there, including Nigerians. But what happened? What happened there? Where were these deal caught? They were taken from a rest house, an improvised rest house. How do you expect a prefer to live in an improvised rest house? Had they fulfilled their own obligation under the 2006 Green Tree Agreement, the deal would have at least had some basic security. But they signed up to it. That agreement was witnessed by the United States, witnessed by France, and witnessed by Great Britain. So these people are just criminals in every form or shape. They are international liars. Again, back to your question, the people who venture to practice in Cameroon call it human rights, even in the courts. The courts in Cameroon, if you don't do what the government tells you to do, you lose the job. You lose the job. So if you operate in the geographical space called Cameroon, I've been there. You lose your job. I remember, let me give this personal experience. 1991, 1991, when the SDF started, they sought to incriminate Nifrundi that he has stolen money from the Cameroon Bank. And they charged Nifrundi sued them in the Bamenda High Court. And they say, well, we cannot get any lawyer from Bamenda. We'll get somebody from the Southwest because the Bamenda lawyer will come and support their countryman. And so they came to Biya to look for us. And I was one of the people they took from Biya. I went there. They provided us security. We did all what we tried to do. They killed the judgment first. They never paid me a dime. They promised us so much money, they never gave us a dime. What will I do? What did I do? Operating in that space called Cameroon is a prison by itself, a moral prison, a physical prison, an intellectual prison. So for those our brothers who are still venturing to be there, thank them for doing what they're able to do. But we would ask them to improve their job. Because at the end of the day, the next hearing, wherever, even in court, it's not you and me who are going to testify. Somebody living there who gave that information to that reporter that there's a mass grave, because he knows where the mass graves are. They are already mapped out in those reports. Somebody will testify it. So our brothers and sisters who are still there practicing, kudos to you for even venturing it, for those who do the good job. But try to do it better by forming alliances with foreign press, reputable ones, where we can properly document these things. These crimes are crimes against humanity. They are international crimes, most of which are imprescriptible. Paul Biya, alive or dead, will be held accountable, together with his surrogates.
When,
Over to you.
when you say Paul Biya alive or dead will be held accountable, the common man hears that and it is kind of funny. But I'm happy for two things you would have said. You have acknowledged that Agbobala is an apologist and therefore some of his reports should not necessarily be taken seriously by those who estimate him as a human rights lawyer. The Ambazonians who would believe that he was not supposed to be holding the portfolio as a freedom fighter that he's holding. So, and I respect every side of that discussion. And another thing that's important is for the international community to try to listen to our own recommendations as you all are presenting. Dr. Lobati, I know you still want to get into some details on that report. I think you have the floor to do that right now. But you may want to read some aspects. But as you do read it, I want us to examine what Cameroon is saying in that report. I think in number 7, and you read, you go down, they talk about information on violence against women and children. And when I read it last night, it was a total fraud. And like Barrister Mbeseha is saying, you see them there giving references of laws that they have implemented. But we are talking about practicality. It's totally a fraud, a clear fraud. So whatever you're commenting there, perhaps you want to comment on this, on Cameroon's claim vis-a-vis what they're saying in information on violence against women and children. Dr. Lobati, please.
I don't know that will go to the children, but let me bring this one. You notice that some people say 500 villages, some say 700 villages were burnt. If you have a picture, if you have a video of that event in Lobialem where the military was burning houses and you see them in a military vehicle and military people going around, hear what the Republic said. They said regarding the looting, burning of villages, and killing of Anglophone civilians allegedly perpetrated by the army, especially in Babulok, Bangam, and Dok in January of 2020, and also in Kwakwa. Remember where that grandmother was burned in the house? Dadi, Kajifu, and Bodam villages in December of 2017. Investigations were ongoing to verify the accuracy of these allegations and establish possible responsibilities. So we are in 2024. La Republique is still trying to verify whether those villages were burned by La Republique military. before they decide whether to punish them. I mean, if you have one of those videos, you need to play it for our audience to see. I don't know that you will do it today. You may do it in one of the programs where they can see the military, and everybody knows in the villages that the military came, they went around burning people's houses. People ran to the caves or up the mountains and hills to hide for their lives, and their homes were roasted and burned. The grandmothers and grandfathers that could not run were roasted in the houses. Children, little babies that were some abandoned in the houses as the parents ran into the bushes. One was even shot by a military laying down in a chair. And here, this is the report that La Republique gives. They're still investigating to find out whether it's true and then to decide what to do. That is the kind of country that we're dealing with. So when they come to talk about children, it's a joke. They say that they don't lock up children. They, that very nice police and gendarmerie quarters, they make sure that children are kept and well protected, almost like a kindergarten, behind the desk of the police officers. Nobody harms them. They take great care of them. According to this report, you can read it. It's 36 pages. That they stay there and they separate them from adults and take good care of them. And then, because they don't have infrastructures to take care of juvenile delinquents and things like that, and they are still working on building one. So the police and the gendarmes, they take great care of them, making sure that they are children. Also for women, they don't do that. There is no rape. We saw one of our daughters and sisters or mother crying in Bamenda, how she was just walking by the road and she just delivered a child. And the police or gendarme officer called her to the side and wanted to rape her, and she was saying, "I'm a nursing mother. I just delivered a little baby." They didn't care. They raped her on gunpoint. And sometimes they have raped and then killed them at the end. That is the kind of thing that they do, and claim that they handle women differently and children differently from men. There is really no big difference what La Republique does. They are wicked and they are very cruel. You cannot really literally characterize who they are. If we find some of those pictures and those videos that we have in our archives where they were roasting villages, you can present it and you will see the army going around as they were burning those villages and burning those houses. You see military trucks as they were going around burning those villages.
This is some of them where you have, these are villages, whole villages that have been razed down by the Cameroon military. And these are people roasted in their houses by the Cameroon military. And it's unfortunate to see how Cameroon denies them, in the face of the international community. So I don't know if you're done with that, but I really want, before I get back to Barrister Mbeseha, I want you to really talk a little bit more on how Cameroon treats women, how they do treat. We have seen several images on how these were girls in the Biya University, and this keeps happening. They do not only rape these girls, they don't only rape them, they beat them. This is what the gendarmes, and these gendarmes did this with impunity. They beat lawyers and camera. Nothing has been done to them. These are girls rocked in this kind of sewage from the hostels. If you've ever been in any hostel, you know how it is done. This can give an infection that will cause a life. So these are girls. They have been naked. Some of them have been raped, and then they are now wrapped in mud. What did they do? What was their crime? They were allegedly participating in peaceful protests or peaceful protests in Biya. So the examples are numerous, and I want you to talk a little bit on that, Dr. Fred, before I give the mic to Barrister.
So
with regard to living this,
one thing I would say, if you live somewhere and you know exactly what is happening to you and how it is reported by La Republique, that is how you should report on somewhere else. I will read here an example of how they treated women and children in what is called in the north Boko Haram. But let me bring it back here for us to understand. Our people lived in the former British Southern Cameroon. We know what they have done. We have seen it. We get the reports. We have the details. And we hear how La Republique twists the story and tells lies. All right. When the SDF was launched in 1990, I was at City Chemist roundabout the popular Liberty Square, where the 6 men were shot, and actually 2 police military people were killed that day. But La Republique says an illegal march occurred in Bamenda and 2 people were trampled upon and they died. And that is the version that La Republique always gives. But what we do know is that the military shot and killed 6 young men. People got angry. 2 military people that shot and said they were given instructions not to shoot. Why did you shoot? And one of them killed the other one and was running towards Old Town. People chased that one and killed him also on the road. So you find 2 military people lost their lives. 6 people were shot that day. The La Republique says 2 people were trampled upon. So what I'm trying to say is that if you know what truly happened, then you can appreciate what they say happened somewhere else. So now let me come and read what La Republique did to women and children in what is called the area where Boko Haram operated. And of course, we can bring it to Ngabo and many others in Amazonia, where we know that they even took a small child and threw in boiling water. But let me read their report here. On the killing in July of 2018 of the 2 women and their children accused by the Cameroonian army of being member of Boko Haram. That means they were accused of being members of Boko Haram, the women and the children. So they said in 2015, Zelevet, a village located in Mayo Muskota subdivision, far north region of Cameroon, a clash occurred between Cameroon Defense Forces and some fighters of the Boko Haram terrorist group. These fighters retreated, leaving behind 2 women and 2 children who were arrested and taken to the station commanded by an officer. Having been subsequently identified by the local population as members of the Boko Haram terrorist group, the officer instructed his men to arrest them. In keeping with these orders, 3 soldiers took the women and children to the foot of the Mount Vigibi, where they were killed in the presence of a 4th soldier who filmed the scene. So they're trying to say that the army operates under international norms, but there are some who don't follow instructions. So they gave the right orders as they want the listeners to hear in that committee, but some other soldiers decided to disobey and did something different. Then this is how they handled them. Having knowledge of the facts in July of 2018, following the dissemination of images of the gruesome scene on social media, the high authorities of the state immediately instructed the opening of an investigation, which led to the arrest of all the soldiers involved and the opening of a preliminary inquiry against them. The examining magistrate issued a remand warrant against all of them and sent them to be tried before the Yaoundé Military Tribunal as co-defendants and accomplices of capital murder and breach of orders. After hearing the case, the Yaoundé Military Tribunal rendered its judgment on 21 September 2020. The senior officer and the 3 soldiers who opened fire were sentenced to 10 years in prison, while the soldier who filmed the scene was sentenced to 2 years in prison. On September 30th, 2020, the legal department lodged an appeal against this judgment. The matter is currently pending before the Center Court of Appeal. So remember, that is a case where Issa Chiroma came and said that the event occurred but in Mali, not in Cameroon. But later on, it came out clear that this was in Cameroon. So now they are telling you here that these soldiers were disobeying orders good orders given by their seniors. And so eventually, when the thing became an outcry of the international community, the soldiers were taken, judged, and condemned to 10 years and 2 years. And they appealed the case, and they were appealed, and so the soldiers were let go, and that is still pending. Can you imagine? This is how La Republique treats. So they do that all the time. They shot a child in the back of the mother, wrapped in wrapper, and killed the woman in cold blood, as was seen in that video. And this is how they handle the case, which is still pending. And many times we know that when soldiers have misbehaved and killed people, even in so-called peacetime, they will just claim that they are doing an inquiry and then transfer the soldier somewhere else, especially when they are bulus Nothing happens to them. In Womb, there was a military officer who was competing with an Okada rider over a girlfriend. That was before this event around 2016. And the military officer shot and killed the Okada rider. So the people got angry, the youths in Womb got angry and attacked this military officer for killing one of theirs. The information reached Yaoundé, and the minister or delegate in charge of the military went to Womb, and the minister of territorial administration went to Womb, and they gathered over 100 young people and carried them to Yaoundé. That was before the Anglophone uprising. Until today, nobody has heard anything about that. And mothers in Womb marched on foot from Womb to Bamenda to the governor's office to find out what happens to those over 100 young men. Till today, nobody has talked about them. They are probably dead. We saw situations in Yaoundé where young people were killed in the prisons and their dead bodies were literally dumped in a hole. Dead bodies are being pushed from trucks where they were carried, multiple of them, and dumped into the mass graves and covered there. That is what La République does. And so when you ask me what La République does to women and children, that one in the so-called Boko Haram region is just an example. And as I told you, what they would do in the English-speaking zone or the former British Southern Cameroon is magnified even over 10 times. They do worse than, like you saw, when Longue was being held with a chair and maltreated and beaten with a cutlass, compared to the other man who was done the same and beaten till he gave up the ghost. You see that the maltreatment is even worse. Longue is still alive. That's what I would say right now.
The truth about it is that if Longue can be treated, that's a superstar in the Cameroons. If he can be treated like that, what more of somebody who cannot blow the whistle? So it's even insane for the common man to see the international community giving the platform for Cameroon to make such claims and bring window dressing laws and constitutions to read them. Their report is full of what is. Is full of what is in their documents and the justifications they have to do. So they give instructions for these people to do these extrajudiciary killings, and then they deny it, and then people listen to them. It's a terrible thing, and a lot of people, I'm talking from the common man perspective, feels really frustrated about it. But Mbeseha, you know this more than any other person else. You have been with us in this journey. The images Dr. Lobati is talking about, where that is an evidence of the way Cameroon military will treat what they even call terrorists. They are calling us terrorists so that they can treat us. Or in fact, they have been treating us like this. So they want to justify that by calling us terrorists as well. But Mbeseha, please, as we round in this important phase of our discussion, I would really like you to talk to us.
Yes, I think the mistake we make is that we believe that we make the mistake to think that because the Republic says no, we didn't do it, it means that they didn't do it. No. You see, I've been in law for a long time and we do criminal trials. Even in this country, people are brought, El Chapo, for example, they are brought into court for big crimes. The first thing they do is that I'm not guilty. I'm not guilty. When everybody sees that he's the one who shut down this guy, the man will say, I'm not guilty. Does the fact that he says, I'm not guilty, make him not guilty? No. There's enough evidence to show that you are guilty. And that is what these people are doing. You see, what you are seeing there, I didn't know that. They do a 2-year review, this human rights group. Every 2 years they come and say, okay, you see what they're saying, 2019, this is what you told us. This is still not satisfactory. So it's a process that they follow. So what Yaoundé puts there is not necessarily the correct story. There's a lot. They will always say we didn't do it, but there's evidence to point to the fact that they did it, and they're still doing it. You're talking about women and children. I don't even want to go to that woman far in the far north. That's too far away. Let us just deal with the women in Amazonia, very close to us. What you showed there, the segment you showed of the girls in Biya, Remember, they were investigating torture. What those guys went through in Biya, they are women. Some of them very young, even to be called children. That is torture by itself. They didn't deny that. That is torture by itself. Robbing those women, young women or old women in mud, beating them up, is first class evidence of torture before our own eyes. That is Biya. You don't need to go far again. A few months, is it up to a year ago, we saw a certain Moja capture a woman in Biya on claims that she was a boyfriend to somebody. They took her to their court. There was evidence clear. This woman said, I am pregnant. Nonetheless, it meant nothing to them. They took her to jail until she got paid in jail. That is a woman. That's a child she got paid to in jail. What other evidence do you have to counter that as evil against women? Not long again, right here that we speak, a woman gave birth to children, is it twins or something, in the Biya Central Prison. How does a woman find herself in prison and gets pregnant? That is a violation of the woman's rights in detention. And as I've said, see, Yaoundé is fond of cash up. Just after this hearing in Geneva on Monday, maybe you're not aware of that, on Monday, Galix Ituga, the principal man, Yaoundé, the delegate or minister for the gendarmerie, he sent out a circular officially to all the regions. Detention beyond the time is not allowed. It's a crime. That's all. When they do the next hearing, he will present a piece of paper. We have said they should not detain people. If somebody is doing it, it's just illegal. So they are doing catch up because in that hearing they were backwards on the wall. So they come and write that thing. Who among us, including you and me, even there, will believe that the gendarmes will respect that thing? They will still capture you and detain you, but they have covered themselves up with a document that they will go to the hearing next time. You produce it and say, well, you addressed this issue last time, we promised to take care. This is what we did the next day. We wrote a circular out and sent to all the gendarmerie stations to remind them, because they are just reminding them, because according to them, they already know. So these people are, I don't know how to describe them. They are a nation with a different, because a good nation is a nation made up of human beings who
I like the way you put it. I like the way you put it, a nation with a difference. Barrister Mbeseha, Dr. Fred Lobati, we are out of time. And I know there's so much. You spent much of your time last week talking about these human rights reports, and Dr. Fred himself did exactly the same. We have done justice to this, but we're going to examine what we would have discussed today, and probably we will get into more of this discussion again on Saturday. I'm sure Dr. Patience will have some aspects of it discussed again tomorrow. Whichever be the case, ABC Amba TV will inform the world of everything that's happened. Peradventure, you are doubting what we have been commenting with the panelists here this evening. We have Star Smart, who has a report on some of the most recent incidences of crimes against humanity by the colonial administration or government of Biya. Right after that, Onye will be bringing to us the news this evening.
The war in Ambazonia, a conflict born out of a quest for freedom and statehood, has exposed the relentless violence of the colonial regime. Once a peaceful and thriving nation, Ambazonia now finds itself under siege, with its people subjected to egregious human rights violations and crimes against humanity. The colonial military's actions reveal a calculated effort to crush Ambazonia's aspirations for sovereignty, targeting civilians in ways that defy both human decency and international laws. From arbitrary arrests to gruesome massacres, the colonial regime's atrocity against Ambazonians range from heinous to horrific. High-profile cases like the Nera 10 and Abdul Karim highlights the regime's use of arbitrary arrest and military trials to suppress dissent. Detained without due process, these individuals symbolize the regime's disregard for basic human rights. In November 2023, the colonial military executed an alleged Ambazonian liberation fighter named General Gideon and paraded his corpse through Kumba, denied his right to a fair trial, and this act of jungle justice exemplifies the regime's lawlessness, and this is just one out of too many. The cold-blooded killing of 5-year-old Caroline Indiale in Biya in October 2021 shocked the world. A francophone gendarme murdered the child when her mother refused to pay a bribe of less than $1. A chilling reminder of the systemic brutality Ambazonians face. Well, it gets worse. The Ngabur massacre on February 14, 2020 remains one of the darkest chapters in the Ambazonian War. Over 22 civilians, including children, were slaughtered by the regime's forces who razed homes and burned bodies to erase evidences. Other massacres in Santa, Menkam Pinyin 2018, in Batibo, Baliyonga, and most recently in Manfe, Ebeko, November 6, 2023, just last year, further underscores the ongoing genocide. Over 50 unarmed civilians were killed in Manfe, marking another grim addition to the regime's bloody record. While the colonial military has committed atrocities that defy comprehension, including frying infants in oil and locking civilians in buildings before setting them ablaze. These acts are not isolated incidents, but part of a systematic campaign to instill fear and erase Ambazonian identity. The colonial regime's brutality shows no signs of abating, with each massacre, each murder, each violation of human rights only reinforcing the urgent need for justice. The conflict has devastated communities, displaced countless families, and left an indelible scar on Ambazonia's collective memory. Ambazonians continue to await the day when these crimes are brought before international courts and those responsible are held accountable. Until then, the peace-loving people of Ambazonia remain resilient, steadfast in their pursuit of justice, freedom, and the right to determine their own destiny. The atrocities committed by the colonial regime are not just attacks on Ambazonians, but crimes against humanity. These barbaric acts demand global attention and swift action. The Ambazonian people's fight for sovereignty is not just a struggle for independence. It is a fight for survival, dignity, and the restoration of peace. The world must stand with Ambazonia to end these violations and bring an end to impunity.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news untold stories. I am Oni Obama. Let's begin. Hello, good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Oni Obala. Let's begin. Well, all the reports you just watched this evening and all of the atrocities accumulates for years that we have documented and reported the harrowing human rights realities unfolding in the Cameroons. Despite the efforts of the Biya regime to manipulate narratives and present distorted reports on the international stage, such as their recent attempts in Geneva, the truth remains unshakably clear. The regime's accounts are rife with inaccuracies, omissions, and deliberate fabrications designed to obscure a devastating reality. Their situation in the Cameroons is far grimmer than the carefully curated image presented by the BS government representatives. Beyond the glossed over narratives, the lies, the atrocities that have scared communities and shaken the conscience of humanity, reports of infants subjugated to unspeakable and unspeakable brutality, including being fried in hot oil, and the rampant destruction of villages, the systemic and systematic killings and indiscriminate arrests are a grim testament to the suffering endured by innocent Amazonians. These are not isolated incidents, but part of a chilling pattern of oppression and disregard for human life. Over the years, we have stood as witnesses to these atrocities, tirelessly documenting and shedding light on the plight of the victims. Our commitment to truth and justice is unshakable, even as the regime attempts to rewrite history and mislead the global community. The inaccuracies in their recent reports in Geneva only underscores the need for vigilance and a renewed call for accountability. This document aims to set the record straight. It exposes the brutal realities on the ground, challenges the false narratives propagated by the regimes, and amplifies the voices of the oppressed. As the Cameroons continue to navigate this dark chapter in their history, it is imperative for the international community to confront the truth and take decisive action to ensure that justice prevails. Let this serve as a call to action, a demand for transparency, accountability, and an end to the suffering that has plagued the Cameroons for far too long. Now let's get the prime headlines. Well, tonight on Undaunted, amongst other report, is the fact that La République du Cameroon colonial army is invading Bafut, ransacked homes, emptied foods in ports, looped shops, raped girls and mothers. Tonight on Undaunted, we take a report that goes straight to the airport in La République du Cameroon's dying off as they have diverted all their resources to sponsoring the war against Amazonia. In the Savannah region, drivers fight for survival amid rising costs, and road safety is also a challenge. Also tonight, we take a look at two yellow-colored township taxis being set ablaze in Bamenda, the chief town of the Midland Zone of the Federal Republic of Amazonia. Another kidnap case, the former mayor of the Bafut Council, Langsi Abel, his whereabouts is still unknown. That's not all. On the African scene, we have the fugitive Zambian arrested in Zimbabwe, a cross-border legal drama. While on the foreign scene, Israel-Iran war, big trouble for Israel days after airstrikes as Iran reaches closer. Now let's get into the full briefings. All right, tonight, La République du Cameroon army invades Bafut, ransacks homes and empties ports, and does a whole lot of ill things to the people. Oh, well, it will take a considerable amount of time for the people of Mfoya, a neighborhood in Bafoot local government area, to recover from the damages inflicted on them by forces of occupation. The colonial army, in the early hours of Wednesday, the 20th of November 2024, invaded the locality in the name of hunting the Amazonian State Army. Out of the usual frustration they always have in such a failed program, the colonial army then vents their angers on the innocent population. The thugs broke into homes asking for the ASA. When they found none, they ransacked all the houses, stole money, ate all the food in the kitchen. That's not even all. Raped some girls, stole drinks from shops, and carried away all the bags, loaded them in a truck. The bikes were ferried to the Colonial Police Station where they collected ransoms from those who could afford them and were freed. Those who couldn't pay were detained. Now, this is exactly the way the colonial army operates in the Federal Republic of Amazonia. Wherever the colonial army steps their foot, the innocent people of Amazonia must suffer one form of oppression or the other. This is not even mentioned amongst all of the atrocities. Business leaders raise alarm over the degrading state of the airport as well. So, both home and away, there is always serious problems in the Amazonian government. Now, the coffers of the La Republique du Cameroon government are similarly dry as the regime embarks on huge financial engagements to sustain its military option in the war against Amazonia. Now, that's not all. The weight of the financial cost of the ongoing war in Amazonia is being felt in other sectors of La Republic of Cameroon. Business leaders have raised alarm about the degrading state of airports in the Cameroons. The president of the Cameroons Business Group, Celestine Tawamba, has addressed a formal letter to the general manager of the Cameroons airport, raising concern about the deteriorating state of the airport infrastructure and service across the country. In the letter, Mr. Tawanber highlighted the growing frustration within the business community over the poor state of terminal facilities and equipment meant for passengers. The reception, orientation, and security conditions fail to meet the international standards expected in a country like theirs. Now, he also noted that the aging infrastructure and inadequate maintenance have rendered the Cameroonian airports unfit to provide quality services for passengers and also for the airlines. The inefficiencies highlighted include outdated baggage system, prolonged waiting time, and lack of modern facilities impacted the country's image. Now, amidst these inadequacies, the colonial regime is investing huge amounts of taxpayers' money in purchase of weapons of war and armored cars for the military to sustain war against the people of Amazonia. So, all round, there is total suffering, not just Amazonian suffering, but even the Cameroons and the Cameroonian suffering as well. Should we keep on talking about sufferings? How about bad roads? Drivers in the savannah zone of the Federal Republic of Amazonia faces significant challenges due to safety issues and raising transport costs. At Mobile, a key loading point, many drivers report that roadblocks created by military elements from La Republic to Cameroon and increased fuel prices have led to fare hikes, with transport costing soaring from 1,200 to 2,500 francs for some routes. Long-time drivers' testimonies reveal a mixed situation while drivers and while military agents from La Republic du Cameroon claim a reduction in harassment from armed groups. Checkpoints remain numerous, leading to additional costs. For instance, a driver on the Bamenda-Fundum route noted fares have risen from 1,500 to 5,000 francs due to need to pay off armed military colonial men blocking the roads. The situation is especially there in areas like Fokana, Bambui, Babanki, where threats of kidnappings persist, where unknown gunmen are driving and owning places. Drivers express frustration over excessive controls, which is very sad. Now, brother Marcel, who runs the Bamenda Kumbo route, discussed how deteriorating roads and random attacks from armed groups have pushed fares from 2,500 to 7,000 to 8,000 francs. The need to deter through Bafoussam, a town on the west side of La Republic de Cameroon, for safety has further increased journey times and costs. Mr. who is the president of the Drivers' Trade Union in the area, highlighted ongoing discussions with local authorities to reduce checkpoints and improve security. He emphasized the need for infrastructure development, especially the completion of the ring roads for years now, to enhance the movement of goods and people in the region. At this point, you may want to pause and think. The air is not safe. The land is not safe. The sea is not safe as well. So where can the people lean for succor? Well, the driver's plight reflects a broader socio-economic impact on the Savannah zone in particular and the Ambazonian territory as a whole, where market goods are becoming scarce due to the ongoing war launched by La Republic de Cameroon since 2016 and where life is becoming miserable. Is that all there is? No, of course. Taxis and drivers are also suffering from a whole lot of mayhem. We have a report here: two yellow-colored township taxis set ablaze in Bamenda. And who did that? You would find out shortly. Now, in this particular report, you would see that two township drivers have lost their source for livelihood as their taxis were burned to ashes before their very eyes by armed men of the Ambazonian Defense Forces armed group. So the incident that took everyone by surprise happened, according to reports, at the Brazilians Junction at about noon on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. The perpetrators, after putting the two taxis with yellow color on flames, disappeared on board a red RAV4 Toyota vehicle after firing gunshots in the air. Those who witnessed the act showed bravery by rescuing a private car that was close to the taxis in flame. All the attempts to quench the flames were fruitless due to the magnitude of the flame. This attack only adds to the number of taxis already burnt by the ADF. Many have been putting accusing fingers to the ADF, qualifying them as a proxy militias to the colonial army with the amount of pain they inflict on Ambazonians, which is also true. But Ambazonians must continue to trust the ASA because the ASA is there to trust. The ASA is also there to defend them. Is that all? How about the numerous kidnappings? The numerous kidnappings and abduction. And so the former mayor of the Bafut Council, Langzi Ebel, his whereabouts is still unknown after being kidnapped for 5 days by unidentified men. The former mayor of Bafut Council, Langzi Ebel, has spent his fifth night in captivity. Report holds that he was captured and kidnapped 5 days ago. The current social atmosphere in the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is that of uncertainty. Political and business and professional rivals are increasingly using the fragile security landscape as a result of the ongoing war to settle scores. The war in Ambazonia has been on for 7 years and counting, with the creation of different armed groups, some by elites with selfish ambitions and others by the octogenarian Biya's government to destabilize the genuine fight of the Ambazonian people. With the multiplicity of armed groups, it is difficult to attribute an action to a particular armed group, except the Ambazonian State Army, with a clear modus operandi that is of defending the Ambazonian homeland from colonialists. Langzi Ebel, according to report, was last seen donating books and other school supplies to orphans in Bafut through the Langzi Foundation on Wednesday, November 13, 2024. The following day, he was abducted from the premises of the Bafut District Hospital, where he had gone to visit a patient. At press time, nothing has been heard from him or the kidnappers. His family members have not been contracted, and ransom demands have not been made as well. Before being kidnapped, Langzi Ebel has been residing in Bafut for some time. Well, according to resources and reports, it is alleged that the former mayor was kidnapped due to his efforts to re-establish and revitalize the Social Democratic Front's party in Bafut. The SDF has being at some point the nightmare of the colonial regime. As an opposition party, the baffled local government had lost momentum in opposing the colonial government for nearly 8 years since the SDF lost credibility. Could it be that Langsi is in the hands of the colonial army with instruction from, political rivals of the colonial party? Oh well, Undaunted will definitely continue to give you more update as it involves this particular report, and also all the untold stories from the homeland and the home front. Will definitely give it to you just like we've done. And for the world to know that Amazonians are going through serious torture and definitely needs a helping hand. Well, coming up right after this short break will be news across Africa.
Stand with Ambazonia. Empower ABC Amba TV. We are calling on Ambazonians around the world to unite and uplift ABC Amba TV, Ambazonian Broadcasting Corporation. In this critical time of war, ensuring the station's survival is more important than ever. But what does ABC Amba TV truly represent for Ambazonia?
At the heart of Ambazonia's war of independence, ABC Amba TV stands as a beacon. Years of recolonization, annexation, and French Cameroon's oppressive occupation of the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia have led to our exclusion. Our identity was hidden, our history distorted, our sovereignty denied. Queen of England is aware that the British Southern Cameroons were never a colony under France.
Since its inception in 2018, ABC Amba TV has been our lifeline.
Months of diplomacy have failed to resolve the crisis as fear grows over an imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Our work in the dark is our chance to tell our stories to the world, to give voice to the voiceless, and broadcast the truth of our struggle.
We are serious about executing this revolution.
It has become a vital arm of our government in wartime, making diplomacy achievable and showcasing our untold stories.
ABC Amba, you guys know how important ABC is for this, our quest for international recognition.
Your donations can make a world of difference. Every bit of support helps keep our stories alive, our presence known, and our fight in the global conversation.
The moment they notice that we are no longer on air, they think that, oh, maybe La Republic has succeeded. This is about Amazonia. One thing we must always remember.
Where would we be without ABC Amba TV? Let's ensure we never have to find out.
A revolution is a temporary state of insanity to bring about sanity.
Mobilize, donate, stand with Ambazonia, donate to ABC Amba TV.
Together, let's write the next chapter of our history.
It is better to light the candle than to curse the dark.
Support ABC Amba TV campaign. Ambazonia Independence, voice for the voiceless. Mobilize for change.
All right, Africa, let's start with Zambia. Zambia lawmaker Emmanuel J. Bender is facing robbery and custody escape charges, has been captured in Zimbabwe after fleeing from a hospital under police guard in August. Detained in Harare, Bender awaits extradition while Zambian authorities investigate his escape and connections to individuals facilitating it. Bander's arrest has drawn criticisms from the opposition Patriotic Front, the party which decries it as politically motivated and demands adherence to extradition protocols. The case has amplified concerns over Zambia's judicial process and its treatment of political opponents. How about Sudan? Sudan's humanitarian crisis worsens. The humanitarian crisis in Sudan continues to deepen as rampant criminality and ethnic violence exacerbates the devastation of ongoing conflicts. Mother Rishmawi of the International Fact-Finding Mission has highlighted the impact of sexual violence as a weapon of war and the widespread displacement it causes. Aid delivery remains severely hindered by lawlessness and government-imposed restrictions, such as the temporary closure of vital crossings. Rashmawi called for urgent action, including a new social framework to rebuild peace and unity in the fractured nation. In Kenya, Kenya's president, William Ruto, has cancelled multi-million-dollar airport modernization and energy contracts with Indian billionaire Gautam Adani following U.S. bribery and fraud indictments against the tycoon Adani's group. Had planned to overhaul Nairobi's main airport, adding a new runway and terminal in exchange for managing it for 30 years. Ruto cited information from investigative agencies as the basis for decision, marking a significant move to distance Kenya from the embattled business figure. Coming up next, news across the globe. Well, Iran's nuclear intention remains a significant concern for Israel and the United States. Despite negotiations aimed at reviving the joint comprehensive plan of action, Iran's nuclear program continues to trend in the wrong direction. Iran has increased its stockpiles of uranium enriched to 60%, which can quickly be enriched to weapon-grade levels. The International Atomic Energy Agency has limited access to certain nuclear facilities, making it challenging to establish reliable baseline inventories for certain materials. The expiration of the UN restrictions on the Iran research, the development, and the production of ballistic missiles in October 2023 has also raised concerns, while the impact on Iran's proliferation of missiles and drones is expected to be minimal. The country is likely to contribute supplying its proxies in the region with missile systems and providing drone support to partners like Russia. To address this concern, the U.S. focus should be on increasing monitoring and oversight of Iran's nuclear program. This could involve incentivizing Iran to allow the IAEA to install and reinstall monitoring equipment at certain facilities and provide data recorded between February 2021 and June 2022. Now, let's look at the potential next step for Iran nuclear program. That's the continued enrichment. Iran may continue to increase its stockpiles of uranium enriched to 60%. What about the advanced centrifuge development? Iran may focus on developing more advanced centrifuge that enrich uranium more efficiently. Missile and drone development. Iran may continue to diversify its stockpile of missiles and drones to expand its options to deter regional rivals. The U.S. Voting Security Council and Gaza ceasefire resolution. Now, when it comes to these reports, the U.S. has once again blocked a Gaza ceasefire draft resolution at the United Nations Security Council, marking the fourth time it has used its veto power to shield its ally, Israel. The draft resolution, which demanded an immediate and unconditional end to the war in Gaza, received overwhelming support from 14 of the 15 council members. The U.S. Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, justified the veto by claiming that the document abandoned the necessity for a linkage between a ceasefire and the release of hostages. However, critics of the veto, including France, have sharply rebuked the U.S., with France saying it deeply regretted the move. This development comes as the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate, with warnings of a potential famine and widespread human suffering. The international community has been urging an immediate ceasefire to alleviate the crisis, but the U.S. veto has dealt a significant blow to these efforts. Let's take a look at China. China has rejected a meeting with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, making the latest downturn in the tumultuous relationship between the two countries' defense leaders. The meeting was proposed to take place at the Asia Defense Ministers meeting, plus in Laos, with Austin seeking to meet with his Chinese counterpart, Admiral Dong Jun. However, China declined the offer, citing a recent Taiwan arms deal as the reason. These developments highlight the ongoing tensions between the U.S. and China, particularly with regards to Taiwan. The U.S. has maintained a long-standing policy of supporting Taiwan's defense capabilities, which China views as a threat to its sovereignty. The rejection of the meeting also underscores the challenges in maintaining military-to-military communication between the two nations. Despite efforts to keep lines of communication open, the relationship remains strained. In May, Austin and Dong Jun met in Singapore, where they discussed U.S. PRC defense relations, regional security issues, and global security concerns. However, the latest rejection suggests that the relationship has not improved since then. And that's all for news across the globe. Coming up next is the recap. Well, tonight on Undaunted, we told you the La République du Cameroon colonial army invaded Bafut, ransacked homes, emptied food in ports as well as raping young girls and mothers. We also reported that the La République du Cameroon airport is dying off as regime is diverting resources to sponsor the war in Amazonia. We took a story of the Savannah Zone drivers fighting for survival amid rising cost and food road safety challenges. Also tonight on Undaunted, we talked about the township taxes being set ablaze by the ADF. We told you tonight on Undaunted that the former mayor of the Bafut Council, Langsi Ebel, his whereabouts is still unknown. And on the African scene, we told you that the fugitive Zambian MP has been arrested in Zimbabwe. And of course, on the foreign scene, we took the Iran and Israel war, where the big trouble for Israel day strikes after air strikes as Iran reaches closer. That's it for tonight on Undaunted. Bringing into the news on George Stories. On behalf of all the technical crew that put together today's report, it's good night and God bless from me.